the Trinity. You're saying there is no change in nature. I'm saying there's a definite change in nature from just being divine to now being divine and human.
Yeah.
I clearly see a change in nature.
Yeah.
I find it hard how you would not see this change in nature.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll leave that to this one. But I'll just say,
Hang on.
I mean, even with foreknowledge, I mean, where the church would say and what the classical theists would say is that even though it is foreknowledge, by God having knowledge of these things existed in the mind of God in some way. So it's the same way, like, you know, with that architect, that
the plan
exists in his mind. So it is there in some way, even though in reality it's not physically there, even though it's in the mind of God. Or a painting is in the mind of.
So let's put foreknowledge on the side.
Leaving that for now.
Let's talk about the second person of Trinity. I want to know from you, why do you not see it change when we are talking about from only divine to now divine and human, and that too for all eternity? Why do you not see that as this additional nature as a change? I'm not saying the divine nature changed, don't get me wrong. So I've never ever said or maintained this argument that the divine nature changed. So from your theistic perspective, it's still consistent, i.e. Jesus still possesses the divine nature, but he also has now an additional nature. And to me that additional nature is now, this dual nature is different to just a single nature.
Yes, I agree with you.
To me that is change in nature of the second person of the Trinity. Okay, so I'm not using the word Godhead now, just not to confuse. Did the second person of Trinity, who acquired a new nature, has undergone a change in nature, yes or no?
No, I mean,
why no?
Just the term nature that you're using.
It is, there are two natures, come on, hypostatic union.
No, so when I'm hearing or understanding, maybe I'm just getting you wrong, when I understand change in nature, I'm saying, well, what nature are you referring to? The
nature of the second person of the Trinity.
Okay, so what nature is that though?
Okay, so pre-incarnation or post-incarnation?
Pre-incarnation.
Okay, pre-incarnation he had a single nature.
Okay.
Post-incarnation he has dual nature.
Yes, but then where I then have problems is there's not a change in nature.
Of the second person of the Trinity.
Not, because when you're saying he has a dual nature post-incarnation, that nature that he had pre-incarnation, there is no change in that nature.
I didn't say it.
No, but I'm saying because you're using the term, or maybe I'm just not.
You know why I'm using the term? You know why I'm using it? You know why I'm using it? Because you're looking at change in nature of the divine.
Yeah, because when,
wait. You're thinking in terms of change in nature of the divine nature, okay? Which you really shouldn't, because I'm not at all making that claim.
I know, I've understood you.
Okay.
There,
how many persons are there within the second person of Trinity?
How many persons?
Yes.
One person.
One person. Yes. Did that one person change in nature post-incarnation?
I mean, he had an additional nature, and so he assumed another. Okay, I'll agree with you. If you're using change in nature in that way,
of the second person of the Trinity,
okay,
not of his divine nature.
You know what, I'll go with you there. Then
okay.
I'll say fine.
But the thing is, you see, if you believe that Jesus, the second person of the Trinity, is part of the Godhead, then I would say, based on that changing of his nature, i.e., changing in the nature of the second person of the Trinity, there was a change in nature within the Godhead. Because I'm still maintaining the three persons in the Godhead, but one of them acquired an additional nature. So within the Godhead, there was a change in nature, because based on your belief, this human nature of Jesus will remain attached to him for all eternity. And because the second person of the Trinity is a fundamental part of the Godhead, of the triune God, then there was a clear change in nature within the triune Godhead.
Yes. Okay, so I agree with you there.
But isn't that contrary? Yeah, the problem is God doesn't change in nature.
So I think that's where the assumption is.
Do you think he does?
No, because then we go back to our first discussion about types of essential natures, or types of natures, or types of properties. I think where we say God doesn't change is that God doesn't acquire any other essential properties. God has a set of essential properties, and there is no change in those set of essential properties. When we say that Jesus assumed the human nature, we're just saying he possessed contingent properties. He possessed the properties which are necessary and sufficient to be a human, and he possessed them in a contingent way.
So you're saying him becoming a human is not necessary?
Oh, no.
So why did he become a human then?
Not at all. So, but remember, when I'm using necessary...
It really defeats the purpose of Jesus becoming an incarnate God. Incarnate human being.
When I'm using the term necessary, I'm using it in a philosophically loaded way. I'm saying it's not necessary as in it doesn't make up his essential attributes. So Jesus had essential attributes of divinity, pre-incarnation, and he had it post-incarnation.
Yeah.
But post-incarnation, when he assumed the human nature, he now possessed certain contingent attributes. Remember, contingent attributes are which you can attributes which you can have and which you can cease to possess, and you'll still be that thing. So remember what I said about a table. A table has essential attributes, which makes it a table, but it can also have contingent attributes such as color, which can be brown or which can be red, and it doesn't make it stop being a table. So Jesus
actually it doesn't follow with the Bible.
No, one second.
Yeah, okay,
so you understand why I brought that. So Jesus had these set of essential attributes, which were attributes of divinity, omnipotence, omniscience, perfect goodness, whatever. Okay. Then he, post-incarnation, possessed some contingent attributes, which are human attributes, which are, we can say whatever makes a human a human. He then possessed them in a contingent way. He could have decided not to possess them, and he will still exist as a divine person. But when he assumed the human nature, he assumed some contingent attributes, and he decides to possess them for the rest of eternity. But they're not essential attributes. So,
shall I tell you how that doesn't work with the? Okay.
Yeah.
When you say essential,
yes.
So you're saying without these attributes of God,
yes.
He wouldn't be. Sorry, brother.
Yes, without.
You're right, Sir.
So without those attributes, he wouldn't be God. Yes.
Okay. Would you consider speech as an essential attribute of God?
Speech is an essential attribute of God. Okay, yeah.
No, I need to understand this in order to proceed.
It's a bit weird, actually.
It's not weird.
No, I mean, okay.
How can you say weird?
No, I mean...
God speaks to the creation.
No, one second. When I normally understand the essential attributes of God, you normally think of omnipotence,
yes, I know.
perfect goodness.
I like to think outside the box.
But, yeah, okay. Speech, yeah, let's go with speech then, yes. Okay.
Do you think it's essential? Can God be God without this attribute?
No, he can't be God without it.
So it's essential.
Yes.
Does God need anyone's permission to speak?
Does God need anyone's permission to speak? As God, no.
Does any of the person within the Trinity need permission to speak?
Does anyone else within the Trinity need permission to speak? There might be certain circumstances when that is so, yes.
So then that actually contradicts your...
Why does it?
Because God doesn't need permission to speak. If you say that any of the persons of the Trinity, each of whom are fully God, yes, need permission to speak, it contradicts your previous...
Yeah. Remember what I said? I said as God, and I made sure that I added that qualification. I said, no, he doesn't need permission to speak.
Is the Holy Spirit God?
One second. He doesn't need the permission to speak as God.
What do you mean
but
as
then
God?
I said in that second one, so how it's not contradictory. If I said straight up, no, he doesn't need permission to speak, then my next sentence I said, yes, he does need permission to speak. That would be contradictory. But because in my first statement I qualified and I said, he doesn't need permission to speak as God.
Okay,
then, one second. Then in my second sentence I said, he doesn't need permission, he might need permission to speak in certain circumstances. Okay, so what I mean by those circumstances...
I understand what you're saying. So when you say as God, you're taking into consideration the Godhead.
Yes.
Full Godhead, and not individual members of the Godhead. Is that right?
No, I mean, so if, let's say the Father was speaking in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
He was speaking through his divine nature in whatever form, and he was speaking.
Very good, yes.
Yeah.
So will you consider the Father requiring any permission to speak?
No. But I'm saying, but then when we're looking in the New Testament, and if there's a certain circumstance when Jesus required God's permission, or to speak, or another person's permission to speak, I would say that.
By the way, I wasn't thinking of Jesus.
No, I'm just saying if that was the scenario, then I would say that that's different from the first one, because
so the Father, when he speaks independently.
Well, because he's speaking.
He doesn't need. I mean, he's not like he's not given. He's not told to speak, or requires permission to speak. He speaks independently of his own volition. Yes. So he's independent, self-sufficient when it comes to speech.
Yes.
Could the same thing be said about the other two members of the Trinity?
Yes.
The Holy Spirit.
Yes.
The Holy Spirit doesn't say anything other than what he hears. in John 16:14. Yes? So he will only say what he hears.
Yes.
What does that tell you?
It doesn't mean anything.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
So,
because when he says he will not say anything other than what he hears,
Yes.
he hears from whom?
yes.
He hears from whom?
Let's say Christ or the Father.
Or the Father.
Yes.
So now he's dependent on someone to tell him what to say. Because he will not say anything of his own. He will only